the 1980s. The 1980s was a very good decade. I wasn't even born yet. I was born in 1990. But when I go on YouTube, I watch a lot of 80s African American music videos from the 80s and 90s. The 80s, the 1980s is when the 70s for. I mean, let's go for African American culture. The 70s was about jazz, disco music, funky music, African American culture, black men with the afros. You got black women with the afros. A lot of people were talking slang, slangs. White people were dressing like black people, were imitating. Elvis Presley was very famous in 1970s too because a lot of stuff that Elvis Presley did, he was a white guy. He had the little thick sideburns. Everything that Elvis Presley did, he stole from black people. And he made it to his own. But it was so cool because he was a white guy. Nobody like I said in the 1950s, you had rock and roll music was stolen from black people too. Black people would do rock and roll. Everything that most white people do, you see stolen from them, except rock music. When white people just screaming that crazy, that's their music. But we'll talk about a lot of things. If you listen closely to white culture and black culture, a lot of white people were stealing music from black people. So. But anyway, the 1980s is when it was very different than the 70s. 1980s, they moved in, it was more rap culture. Inner city, black people, African American inner city ghetto was very popular. We had Ice-T, you had Ice Cube came out, you had, Fat Boys came out in 1980s, rap music. We had a lot of cultural things, music was coming out back then. And rap music was a lot more aggressive. It was more real back then. A lot of black guys would come together and they would talk about what life was like, gang life and all that. Snoop Dogg came out in 1980s, 90s, 80, I think 80s, whatever. It was all about the culture. A lot of white people didn't want their white kids would start buying the music. They would start buying the rap music. A lot of white kids would listen to the black. Their parents didn't like their kids listening to the rap music back in the 1980s, and it all started a whole controversy about that. They were concerned about their kids' well-being, and even now in 2020, there are a lot of white kids who buy black music. Like they listen to Kanye West, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Master P, Busta Rhymes, Jay-Z. A lot of most CDs were bought by white kids, but the 1980s did have a lot of good culture. It was very creative back then. In the 80s hip hop was becoming more popular. A lot of white people were accepting black culture music. Mr. J here, peace.